Welcome back, everyone. We've talked about the Islamic slave trade before and how the political environment in the West silences discussion both about the history of slavery and the present continuing existence of slavery in Muslim lands. In prior videos, I've pointed you to several scholars who have published on this very issue. However, their published work is largely academic. It's not really oriented toward a popular audience. And that's where discussion of the Islamic slave trade remains infrequent among academics, of course, absent from history books, and largely unknown to the general public. And of course, Muslim apologists take advantage of this ignorance to portray Islam as the perfect religion with a spotless past, a true safe harbor in which we can take shelter from atrocities like slavery that never, ever, ever, ever happened in the Muslim world, in contrast to every other evil society. What we need to cure this ignorance is a popular author who writes for large audiences, who is courageous enough to talk about this. Enter Douglas Murray. His latest book is called The War on the West because Murray shows, in numerous ways, how the political left is determined to undermine everything Western. In order to do this, they relentlessly criticize anything and everything in the West, while at the same time acting like everything they're criticizing is a uniquely Western problem. Here in the U.S., many prominent Muslims have aligned themselves firmly with the political left. What this means is that when it comes to issues like slavery, Islam benefits both from general public ignorance of Muslim slavery and from their alliance with the political left, which focuses only on slavery that occurred in the West and will either ignore slavery in Arab lands or call people who draw attention to it, wait for it, Islamophobes. Douglas Murray's Islamophobic book is so important because it exposes this methodology and educates people about the actual history of the Islamic slave trade, among other things. And it's one of the very few books that I know of that addresses these issues at the popular level. Now, let's look at some of the things that Douglas says. When the Muslim empires arose, they expanded the slave trade. As the Muslim empire spread across West Africa during the Middle Ages, it made possible the trading of black slaves across the Sahara. Estimates on the numbers of African slaves who were put into the Arab slave trade are even wider, as well as higher, in their range than the transatlantic trade. The best available figures, proposed by scholars such as Professor Ralph Austin of the University of Chicago, is that somewhere between 11 and 17 million Africans were traded east in the Arab-run slave trade. One reason why the numbers are so difficult to discern is that, unlike the transatlantic trade, the slaves the Arabs traded were systematically castrated after being brought from Africa. In his book, does Douglas Murray miss the fact that slavery continues in Muslim lands? No, he doesn't. He knows that slavery continues, as well as the racism that underlies the Arab slave trade. Still today in Saudi Arabia and across the Middle East, black people are referred to as abid, plural abid, which literally means slave. Being black and being a slave still means the same thing to millions of people in the region. In other parts of the world, slavery continues still. I have met slaves myself. I have spoken with them and seen their tears. Murray comments further on this in a video interview where he mentions Ayaan Hirsi Ali.
In Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries, the word for a black person, abid, plural abid, is slave. They still call black people slaves. My friend Ayaan, who was born in Somalia, spent a bit of time in Saudi Arabia as she was growing up, and they were black because they were from Somalia, and they were certainly blacker than the people in Saudi Arabia, and they were always called abid, slaves.
Huge shout out to Douglas Murray for having the courage to write and say things that a lot of other people will not. His book has a lot more information than I've covered here, of course. Get your copy as well as others I've referenced in prior videos, and educate yourself and others on the issue of past and present slavery and racism in Muslim lands. It's important to understand history, regardless of what the political climate says can and cannot be discussed, and it's important to understand that slavery continues in Arab nations today. And it's also important to demolish even more Dawah talking points, like this one.
So you could say from this perspective, Islam is the only religion in the whole world that has come to do away completely with the pre-existing slavery framework that we have.
Or this one.
The West, in order for it to come to a place where Islam came to, had to develop for 1,000. So basically, Islam was 1,400 years before the West in this thing.
By the way, I can't help but notice. Have you seen how many Muslim apologetic claims are being decisively dismantled these days with extraordinary speed? It's hard to keep up. Muslim apologists need a break, and I vote that we give them one as soon as they start telling the truth. Until then, let's continue to help them out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.